it seems like my family has had a knack for disaster. My brother lives in Anchorage. And in between, I have 3 cousins who live on Squirrel Hill and Pittsburgh. So it's been a crazy year with that. But I'm told these things run in trees. It should be the end.
Sorry.
All right. Does everyone know where we are, where this is situated? All right. This
So I
is,
guess I'll introduce
Is there one over there?
the project, a little preamble.
that would be a kindness. Thank you.
So Kingstontian at the corner of Fair Street Extension and North Front Street span two sides of the street extending down to the hill towards the plaza. So our commission doesn't often review projects of this size and complexity, and I think it's important for us to know kind of the qualities and aspects of the project that we will be reviewing together as a commission to make the determination of appropriateness. Our review procedures will, not tonight, this is just a preliminary review where we will be taking in the presentation materials and giving a little bit of feedback. The applicant has not submitted an application yet, so therefore there will be no public comment period tonight. But when that time comes, this commission's evaluation will follow the review procedures set forth by section 64 of zoning chapter 405 in the administrative code. Things that we will be looking at, or considering, I should say, are the project's relationship to its immediate context in terms of scale, massing, penetration, materials, texture, other architectural details. We'll also consider the history of the site itself and how it's evolved over the decades and centuries. Any potential adverse impacts that might affect existing historic fabric on the site itself. The relevance of the design to the existing architectural patterns of the streetscape, particularly that along the commercial corridors of Wall Street and North Front Street. And as a whole, how the development will impact the how visually impact the integrity of the district from various vantage points. We as a commission don't consider just the site a resource, we look at the whole district as a resource. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So that said, I think the ultimate goal here, over the course of our review, will be that we increase the density of the site from what it is today, while at the same time maintaining its historic integrity. And whatever gets built at the corner of North Front and Fair Street, that it enhance the defining characteristics of the district and its immediate context. This is the place. It is in my opinion that the best architecture is that builds upon the story of the place that it's in. So I also want to note the things that that does not fall under our purview. We do not review interior use or program, except what that may impact the exterior of the building. We do not discuss parking, affordable housing, tenant types, or any matter pertaining to building safety. So in the future, when the public does comment on aspects of this design, we ask that the public keep their comments to the matters that are subject to our review. That said, I will hand it over to Joe Bonura. And I also want to note that his team met with three members of the commission a couple weeks ago to give a preliminary presentation and preliminary feedback. So that was 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, and since then they have made some adjustments. So please pay close attention.
Hi.
Hi.
So what have we got?
Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through a little bit about the site history, and then we'll get into the plan, right? Because some of the board members haven't seen this. So you think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
Please.
I think
Okay,
that's
great. So let me start by way of introduction. I'm Joe Benora Jr., one of the partners of the Kingstontian Development Project. We have Brad Jordan and Patrick Page and Dennis Larios, who's our engineer over here. We're excited to be here. We've been working on this project for almost 2 years now, and we can't wait to show you what we have so far. So, typically when we do this, we have the mayor here too, so I'm going to skip his slide. Okay, oops. Wrong button. I don't know why I didn't want to start, but we're just going to start it anyway. Okay, so we're going to skip ahead here. Okay, so some inspiration. So this building, the Kingstontian Hotel, you guys probably know more about it than we do, but this is at the corner of North Front and Fair Street Extension, where Brad's family has the Herzog warehouse now. So this was a picture taken from the early 1900s, and it depicts what the building looked like then. At that time, this was a hotel, but it was more like a guest house type hotel where there were sleeping rooms and shared restrooms that were on the second and third floor, along with a lobby.
So 1930s.
1930s. There you go. See, I knew you guys would know more about it than me. I knew it was early 1900s. Okay. So the site has various uses over the years. One of the more recent uses for the property directly across the street after the Montgomery Wards building was a parking garage. The parking garage was knocked down in the mid-2000s. One of the issues with the parking structure was long-term maintenance and underground soil conditions that led the parking garage to no longer be structurally viable, and so it had to be torn down. It's been replaced with what you all know now, bottom left-hand corner, which is a surface parking lot. So a little bit of background about the project. Different RFQs were issued by the city for redevelopment of these parcels, or at least the parking lot parcel in particular. There were some specific goals to improve the viability of uptown, addressing parking. I know we're not going to discuss parking per se, but that was one of the reasons for the request for qualification, and come up with a viable project development team. Who are we? So I mentioned myself, I'm Joe Benora from Benora Hospitality Group. We operate several businesses here in the Hudson Valley. I'll show you some pictures in a moment. We have Brad Jordan from Herzog's and the Kingston Plaza, our neighbor directly across the street from where this project is, and Patrick Page from Page Properties, as well as Page Lumber over in Dutchess County. So these are some of the businesses that we operate. Again, not so relevant to the particular architectural discussion, but we do operate hotels, restaurants, catering facilities, multifamily housing, construction, supply company, commercial real estate. Just across the board, we've done a lot of different projects throughout the Hudson Valley. One of the projects, again, not architecturally relevant, but to show you a project we completed a year or so ago in Poughkeepsie. This is the Water Club. It's a 136-unit residential project sitting on top of a parking structure. It's a much smaller parking structure, but that's not far away, just down in the city of Poughkeepsie. Poughkeepsie Grand Hotel, we have experience operating a hotel. This is sitting on top of a 225-car parking structure. And then here you go, a picture of what the site looks like from an aerial view right now. A picture, you can see that the building has been all bricked up. It is not at all, other than the roof line, what it used to be. There's some structural issues that we talked about due to the underground conditions. Our geotechnical engineer described the soils underground once you get down about 30 or 40 feet as the consistency of toothpaste. So it's a challenge for building this. As you leave the stockade district, the higher ground, and you move down, that's where, geographically speaking, it's just super underground. Up top, on top of the hill, and which is one of the reasons why the historic buildings have lasted so long, it's rock, it's strong, it's solid foundations. So being down the hill is more of a geotechnical challenge, and you have problems like these in the existing buildings. So some nearby buildings, this is just a Google Earth image. You guys know this better than anybody else, but this presentation is used for a general community who may not know the Uptown Kingston area. So a couple things. We talked about what does Uptown Kingston need. This is what our direction that we were given in the RFQ: parking to support its residents, quality housing, some hotel rooms, and pedestrian connections. Again, as Marissa laid out, things that you're not necessarily reviewing. So this was one of the views. This was probably the original view done of the project. And since then, we've had a couple different iterations of different architectural looks, which we're going to get into and spend a little bit more time talking about, because I think that's really what your focus is in this group. But just so you understand what the project entails, there's an open pedestrian plaza. This is a public city park right in the middle of the two buildings. You have ground floor, retail, restaurant, commercial space. You have apartments above on the second and third floor to the left and behind the hotel, and then a 32-room boutique hotel on the second and third floor, right where the old Kingstontian hotel was. Below this and behind it is 420 cars of parking, which support the project, but also, and more importantly, support all of Uptown. It basically doubles the amount of parking that's available to the public now, and it's an important component to the project in that we are paying for building and maintaining and operating that parking structure for the life of the building. I have a brief video that I can show you that kind of flies you around the architecture, at least as it was a month ago, and I'll show you that. And then we will look at some of the updates to the, or some of the alternatives, I should say, that we've come up with more recently. The sound may not be great because it's coming from objective phone. I don't really need sound anymore. Oops. So you can see here we're flying into the pedestrian plaza. Whether that fountain is a fountain that looks like this, completely different fountain, or no fountain at all, is to be determined. It's something we're going to work out as we move through the planning and design process. Tree location, planters, benches, all of these things need to be worked out. You'll see here a glass atrium connecting the two buildings together. And that's also allowing light down into the parking area and the drive underneath. The back is still, this is all open to the public, pedestrian plaza. Outdoor dining, events, programming will take place here. You're seeing now what a walk along Schwank Drive will look like. That's just a concept rendering of a pedestrian bridge that gets you across Schwank Drive, and leaves you on the side of the plaza. This is Fair Street Extension, so this curb cut would stay the same, would be the entrance into the parking. There's another entrance into the parking structure from up on North Front Street, although we've completely redesigned that. At least we have an option to redesign that. I'll show you that in just a second. This is kind of a flyover of moving down North Front Street. And then I think there's one more view to see here. Okay, so this is the amenities deck, which is on top of the parking structure and kind of hidden behind the building. So that will be used by residents, hotel guests, etc. Okay, so let me stop that and then we will get back into more of the architecture stuff. You're not so concerned about the interior and how it all lays out, so don't really get into that. Or should I do a quick version?
Look at floor plans to understand how it directs the exterior architecture.
Okay, great. So I'll do a quick version of the floor plan. Impossibly small words, so I'm just going to use the colors to kind of describe things. The green space here, this is the pedestrian plaza. So it starts at grade and basically becomes a cantilevered structure. And then the cars would drive underneath the cantilevered park area and enter into the parking structure from below. There's also an entrance here directly across Wall Street where the entrance used to be into the parking structure. The reddish-orange areas are rentable space, on the ground floor, commercial space. It could be, we see this being a lobby, bar, restaurant use, this being a coffee shop use, kind of like the existing diner that's there now, just relocated and opening out onto this pedestrian space. And then these spaces, to be determined who the tenants would be. The yellow space here would be a small community room, which could be available to the residents, could be available to the general public as a space to meet and have small indoor gatherings. And of course, you have the wonderful outdoor space for gatherings as well. As I talked about here, this outdoor space, you saw the rendering of what it would be, a pool with outdoor seating, grills, barbecues, a place for residents and hotel guests to go. So this would require access control to get out here. The bluish are multifamily apartments. There's a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom and a few 3 bedrooms. The ideal, or I shouldn't say the ideal, the target market is empty nesters and young professionals that will be living in a building in this location. So the next slide just talks about parking. This is just an idea of what one level below would look like. So what's important about the parking structure is that we've tried to hide it from view from almost all angles. We used a liner building on the Schwenk Drive side. So this is a 3-story building that's attached to the parking structure and hides the parking structure. So there's 12 apartments over here. You're just seeing one level of them. That basically masks the parking structure from those driving by on Schwenk Drive. And you can see the outline of the pool poking down through on this level. And you can see the entrance ramp down from North Front Street here. And all of these are different elevators. There's I believe, well, this has been slightly updated. I think there's 5 elevators in total. Yeah, there's 5 there. We just split them up a little bit. And the idea is that we have different stairs and different elevators to allow access for different guests. So some folks are going to live in the building and want to have safety and security, knowing that they can get to their floor and that no one else is going to be able to follow them or get into their corridor. Others are going to be visiting the space, either visiting the hotel or visiting the restaurants, and so they need access. And then some folks are just going to park here and walk to uptown, or may work there, or may live somewhere else in uptown and use this as their parking hub. So there needs to be access for those folks to get into the parking structure and back up to grade in a handicap accessible as well as a stair route without interfering with the residents. So that's why we've given it quite a bit of thought as to how all of that plays out. We talked about residential units, housing, etc. This is a view from the back. Again, the bridge is not fully designed yet. It's just a placeholder at this point to show a structure crossing over Schwenk Drive. We'll keep going and we'll dig more back into it. So we talked about the uses. This is more for a different crowd to take a look at. The point of the bridge was an ADA compliant walkway to get across Schwenk Drive and down to the plaza. We talked about the pedestrian park area quite a bit, and live, work, and play. I mean, that's kind of the plan for this whole project, is a place for people to live. There's opportunities to work within the building, and of course there's new recreational activities. Something we didn't talk about, there's also a dog park that's part of the project. It's on the back side of the building on Schwenk Drive. We found that our residents, or our target market, their children are more pets than children at this point in their lives. They're either young professionals that didn't have kids yet or may not plan to, or the empty nesters, their kids have already moved on. So it's really important to care for the four-legged friends in a way that's humane and sanitary and convenient. So that's an important piece of this project as well. We talked about this recreational plaza, space under shade, space to cook outside, because you can't cook on your balconies under New York State building code. You can't have a gas barbecue. It's not safe. So people downsizing may still want to grill a steak or a burger or a veggie burger or whatever. They need to be able to do that somewhere to have a full lifestyle, and this would allow that. As well as a very social and community atmosphere of gathering for places to eat, hang out, talk, and have small get-togethers outside. So work, we talked about some of the commercial spaces. but it will also enable the uptown businesses to expand their workforce by having great places to live and a really cool place to hang out, and parking, which we hear over and over again is in short supply. We talked about, well, maybe you guys know it as well, or better than I do, it's a great tourist destination as it is, being directly across the street from the Senate Garage and right next to the Senate House. The Friends of Historic Kingston have already asked us, hey, can this be a place we start our tours? And we thought, yeah, that would be awesome. What a wonderful thing to have happen here. So job creation, again, not part of your purview, but this project will create approximately 63 full-time jobs, a little over 200 construction jobs while we're building. And this is kind of an overhead view, which has changed just slightly in its face, but to give you a scale of what's happening, we're basically taking that flat parking lot as well as the space on the top of the hill and using it for building and parking below. Pedestrian Plaza, as you can see here, and then the Kingstontian Hotel is recreated nearly identically, but not exactly identically. It's not possible to do it exactly the same as it was and fit with a floor plate that works inside for a modern hotel. I think I was explaining before, the old hotel had shared bathrooms and very small bedrooms. They were just basically sleeping quarters. And in a modern hotel, you want to have your bathroom as part of your hotel room. And there has to be certain exiting requirements and exit distances and staircases and elevator shafts. So in order to make the floor plate work, it's just slightly modified. And that will be denoted on the application. But it's all in all, in the same spot, in the same orientation, with the same roof lines and windows and front porch. And it is our hope, we'll show you some pictures, to reuse the actual columns that are buried, those wooden columns that you may have seen on one of the previous renderings. They're buried within the brick right now. So it's our hope to actually extract those exact columns out and reuse them on the front porch when we rebuild the hotel component. Dollars, it's a big project. It's a $52 million project. And it's a mix of a public and private partnership. Most of the money is coming from private. 46 million of that is coming from us. And so it's a big thing to pull off a project like this. As Marissa was saying before, it's an ambitious project, it's large. It doesn't scare us. We've done every component of it before, and we're up to the challenge to pull it off, but we need to work together and to try to make something as good as it can possibly be. So, the slide says questions, but before we get to too many questions, I do want to show you some iterations of design as they've changed over time. So, we'll start with the original look. So when I say original look, we had to have something to get started with, and this was it. And we really didn't have a whole lot of feedback from too many folks. I mean, we met with Friends of Historic Kingston, we met with the city administration, and we met with some of the city council members, and they all seemed to generally like the project and like the look of the project, so we proceeded along. However, after our meeting a couple weeks ago, we got some feedback about some very specific things that some members of your group thought might improve the look, and we know it was only some members, there were only 3 members there. So we wanted to talk about some possible options and how things have evolved. So just before the meeting, we came up with a couple different options, which were to change some colors, change some cornice detail, potentially add some bay windows, to break up this space into more vertical variations as you move through the project. Then, given the more specific feedback, we came up with some other options. And so here's one of them, which is essentially the same building, but removing the covered walkway which was set underneath the building and bringing more of a vertical wall, I think I'm using your terms, Marissa, to the facade. And this shows more of a mixture of brick and stonework. And you can see that the entry into the parking garage now becomes covered, and in an attempt to bring that building wall all the way up to where Uncle Willie's and the existing building is now. So the other thing our architect did, which was to try to keep that 3-story feeling, to tie better into the buildings that are next door, and then bump up to 4 stories as we come more toward the corner. And I'll show you some other iterations of this, I'll include my favorite in a moment. And the idea was to create a building like as a primary focus opposite the old Kingstontian hotel, so that you have two really kind of anchor corner buildings as a primary focus, and then secondary is the rest of the building behind it going down Fair Street Extension. So then, I'll skip on to here. So this is just a different version of it. You know, we're flexible with materials and textures a little bit. This is showing a little more brick, but still some stone on the bottom. Then we have an option where it's all brick, and then we bring the covered walkways back. This, we didn't realize how contentious this was when we first started this project 2 years ago. That some people love the pipe plant and some people hate it. And some people want to see it repaired and brought back to glory, and some people want to see it completely go away. So we're somewhat flexible at this point, but it's coming into focus a little bit more that this like covered walkways in Kingston may disappear. So we've come up with, you know, some different options, including, you know, what the building could look like with no covered walkway at all. Although I don't think that the cover over the front door was quite enough. So this was one, I just had her draw this today, like 2 hours ago. So there's no cables or rods going back to the building showing the support, and there's no real cornice detail, but something to bring a little bit more cover over this corner entry into the building, I think is necessary for safety and security, snowfall, someone waiting outside to be picked up or something like that. So, and it also plays off of this front porch look, which is not the same look, but same purpose on the building across the street. So I wanted to show you all of this. This is a lot of information I just threw at you, and especially those of you who have not seen this project before. I know some of you have. And basically what we're hoping to do is to gather some feedback today, so that when we go to the planning board, and actually, which we're planning to do later this month, and present this project, we can incorporate your thoughts into that process instead of it being at the end of the process. As we understand it, typically the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission comes in at the very end, after the planning board has already approved everything and before a building permit is issued. But on a project of this size, it doesn't make any sense for us to do that. If we wait until the very end, and you guys have some really great feedback and great ideas that we could have incorporated in the project earlier, that would be a shame. So that's our purpose to be here now. I hope you get the feeling we're open-minded. We have, you know, done a lot of work. We know that there's some work to go, but we wanted to get your feedback. And one other thing I wanted to point out real quick. I'm sorry that I missed this earlier. So the balconies, which is another thing we talked about last time. The balconies in this front corner of the building, or you can almost think of this as a separate building now, have been converted into punched openings, so that the purpose here was to look like a building that had been here for a while, that had been repurposed to a more modern use. So if this was an older building, and we actually did this with a building in Newburgh on the waterfront called Yellowbird. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But there's punched openings there as well, and it works out well. It still plays well with the intent of the building, but then it also works from a marketability point of view, which again isn't your concern. But for us, if we're offering residential units, people want to be able to get outside a little bit. They need a little fresh air. They want to be able to step outside and survey the situation and their surroundings and see what's going on down the street. And that we're hopeful that this meets a compromise of architectural integrity along with the need for balconies. Okay, that was a lot of words. So I'd love to open it up to you all, and I can flip between anything you'd like to see. I also have this in, if it's going to cooperate, a 3D viewing program called Lumion, which looks like it's not cooperating right now, but it might. It's a very it's a very resource-intensive program. So if it doesn't cooperate, we can just look at the still images and flip back and forth. Okay.
Thank you.
So what do you think from where we started last time?
I mean, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I hope you agree that this idea of sort of solidifying the corner, giving it more emphasis and an identity of its own, helps not only to break down the block, which is large and extends all the way down to Shrink Drive,
Yep.
but it also helps differentiate it from the hotel to give it its own distinction.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things we picked up on last time was so often folks that come in front of you may come in dreading it and thinking, oh no, what are these people gonna make me change? But at the end, being happy, and we like that idea. So thank you for the suggestion, and I think we're happy to work together to come up with something that's better than what was originally done.
I still need we'll need to see more
Sure.
drawings to understand how the corner relates to because in this rendering, we can't quite understand how it relates to the buildings to the rear of it, and we'll have feedback for that as well.
Sure.
I don't think to the extent that we have on North Front Street, which has greater visibility from other parts of the historic district.
Right.
And closing off the street wall so that you don't see the interior of the courtyard, I think is a very wise move. Because I just couldn't help but think walking down Wall Street and you'll see.
That would have been closed off anyway with the old design. We didn't get that far in the design process. I agree with you. If you were going to look down, but we would have closed it off for privacy reasons, but we also received comment from others earlier on in the process that they wanted to keep the view down Wall Street open so that you could see the mountains off in the background. So,
But you wouldn't have seen that with this building.
you probably wouldn't have.
The return at the south end would have closed, north end would have closed it off.
It depended where you were, because we looked at a couple vantage points, you might have seen glimpses of it still. So, but if this is the direction, we're okay with it,
I want to give others a chance to comment, and I can jump back in later.
Yeah, and I'd love to know, this is basically brick, and we have other options where it's partial stone, partial brick, and what are thoughts on that? I clicked the one that I was the most drawn to, which was more brick and some sort of a covered.
So that's
entry.
a projecting canopy.
That's a projecting canopy. Yep. Just basically, from a building owner point of view, and I'm not an architect, as you can probably tell, from a building owner point of view, covered main entries are really important, and for just lots of reasons: wind, snow, safety, practicality. Most of the, if you go up Wall Street, a lot of those entrances are just recessed and they're covered, and there's great classic reasons for that. So we want that to happen somehow, and this is one way it can happen. There's other ways it can happen, and so we're interested in your feedback and comments and suggestions and on any of the parts of the project, really.
I have one question and one comment.
Sure.
And in a way, this doesn't really pertain to us, but since you said that it's basically sitting on, I guess, like marshland,
Yep.
what are you doing to hold up all this tonnage?
Sure. So there's we have over $1 million in the budget to deal with underground stabilization.
Mhm.
So there's different methods depending on, and we have more borings to do. Some areas of the site are just going to require really big footings, greatly oversized. In a normal house where we have a 20-inch spread footing, we're going to have a 10-foot footing.
Mhm.
So some areas can be handled with spread footings. Other areas are going to require, they call them deep foundations. So we either have to strengthen the soil underground by drilling and adding rock, or driving a pile down, or digging out some of the soupy stuff and replacing it with good stuff. And so we need to get, once we know that this project is definitely moving forward through the approval process and things are going well, then we're going to spend the next iteration of money. So we've spent a fair amount of money doing some investigation, but we need to do more to figure out specifically what of those types of stabilization we do in what areas.
Okay.
So we also have to be very sensitive to our neighbors and not do any damage to the buildings that are nearby. There's no blasting. Anything we drive into the ground, we have to make sure that we don't create excess vibration. But we also have to make sure this building's going to stand up. We don't want this lasting just like the old parking garage did, which was only, how long this, 20 years? 30?
30.
Yeah. That's not,
Most of it is because of lack of maintenance on the
Lack of
surface
right.
of the,
Well, one of the other challenges is that when the parking garage was knocked down, it was just cut off at the surface. So all of whatever foundations and footings were there are still there.
I know I used to work in the Aaron Court building
Okay.
down near Kingston Plaza, and I was told that we were basically situated on a swamp. So that it kind of made me wonder, you know, what is under all of this. But then my comment was more on the architecture, and this is, you know, I would really like to look at it a lot more closely. But just as a first impression, when I look at the entire picture, my eye keeps getting drawn to the curved front on the four-story brick
Yep.
building, and on, I think it's an entryway that has a curve.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the
It stands
entryway.
out prominently, and
Sure.
I'm not sure that I like that, because
Okay.
I'm not sure that fits into how I perceive uptown Kingston.
That's
Maybe if
actually
that front
from-
were flat instead of curved.
that's from the
It's-
Montgomery
It's
Ward
from the
building.
Montgomery Ward building.
But it
That's the
has a more
exact-
symmetric, it's not like this.
Do you have that
little
picture?
more like this. Yeah, I can show it to you, but I mean, the
Yeah.
arch is not, it's not the same
There's
type of
pronounced.
arch. It's a little bit more of a half round, and it's not a half
Which
round.
was really the inspiration for all the stone and the
It
one
can't,
color.
it can't quite be a half round because it doesn't,
It has like fully rounded arch, and that's kind of more of a convex arch.
right.
It's a little exaggerated.
The,
It just draws the eye, and then I tend to not see the rest of it.
sure. Well, we're also looking at it from this one vantage point. I would, you know,
Mhm.
looking at it from other points of view, we could, and if that's what we want to change, we can. Now, there are
It's
buildings
just
with
an
this.
impression.
No,
I'm not saying I want to change it, but.
That is something
I
that
would
is-
second Jane, just to save us trouble, I would second Jane's comment. I mean, it's a garage, so I don't know how much attention we want to draw to it, and less is probably better in this case, and that arch. Yes, the Montgomery Ward had an arch, but it wasn't, it
So square it off.
was a much smaller series of arches, and
Right.
it was squared up.
We can't make the arch more of a full circle arch.
Well, so
because
then
of
I
the
might
geometry.
suggest that you look at a design that's a square opening with the idea of an arch. There are other ways to evoke the arch, that's not a deliberate arch.
Sure.
So,
You want that more benign, the garage entrance?
Yeah. Yep.
Less of a
And
eye popper?
another basic question, it's necessary to the program of the parking garage that there be an entrance on North Front Street.
Yes.
That you can't get away with just having it all on the back.
No, we've received a lot of comment about traffic, so everyone has their different area of concern. So the county and others are really concerned about traffic flow and functionality and practicality. So if someone shows up here in GPS and says, I'm coming to whatever, visit my friend or stay at the hotel or go to the restaurant, GPS is going to take them to this address. And so they're concerned that all of that traffic having to go down Frog Alley and then find their way in should go through this entrance instead. So we would give
I
them
know the city, and this is a planning board issue, but, you know, minimizing crossings of pedestrian ways. So
Mhm.
that, anyway, but that's not.
Yeah, it's less expensive for us not to do
I see
it.
that.
But we were given the direction to do it. I can pull up some of those on the screen as well if there's
That would
something.
be nice if you could.
Yeah, yeah, I think I can. I have
I
that.
mean, I might hope that when you do officially present with the full application for us, you include the historic documentation.
Absolutely. So this is everything that you sent us. So do you remember the photo names? Or,
Stephen Blauweis collection, North Front Street.
It's not his collection, but he on behalf of Friends of Historic Kingston compiled
Okay.
all the photos that they have in their library of the site and
is
context.
this?
So we will make that available to the public. We will also make available a packet of historic maps of this area and how the lots have evolved, and the timeline of the history of the site itself. So that will all be made publicly available.
That's
Yeah,
at the
they-
end of the street there.
Right here.
You're looking at the Ford's building.
So when I look down, I see more of a square entrance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Sam Hoff's sort of.
It's hill here.
Right, actually, here you go. There's a squared opening.
Best job.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an easy change.
Yeah.
That's,
I mean, that's not to say just make it,
yeah.
I'm sure your architect will find a way to give it a little bit of specialness
Sure.
that's not, you know, stealing the show of the whole building.
Yeah, yeah, I completely understand. So
I-
garage entrance, more benign, don't steal the show, potentially rectangular to stuff. So we'll see what he comes up with. This is just showing, you know, these are all the photos that we were given. I can go back and look through.
So that's the side of the old Montgomery Ward.
That's right, so this is going down,
That's actually the rear.
That's the rear.
well, it's directly there.
That's the
That would
auto
be the view
service,
from Schwinn.
Auto
auto
service.
service and garden shop.
So that's the full 5-story,
It
okay,
keeps going up, yeah.
yeah.
I think the last picture might show.
Yeah, yeah,
There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's a giant building.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, even the London's building today, while a smaller scale, is a similar height.
So it was 6
Coming
stories.
off the edge of the high point, yeah.
That's one thing to point out, going back to the photo. The height of this building is the same height as what the building is, where Brett's warehouse is now. So
We're talking about different elevations, so which, at what
the
point?
roof, at the
yeah.
roof
Current-
level,
The highest point.
so if you were to look back at, let's go to a accurate photo. What does it look like now? Hang on. This. Okay, so see that point up here? The new building will be the same height as the old building on both sides of the street.
Going all the way down.
Going all the way down, yes, within, I mean, it steps up and steps down a little bit, but my point is it's not a 6-story building on the North Front Street side. It's this height, the height of a 4-story building. Even though this is a 3-story building with the dormers, this makes it the height of a 4-story building. So it's 42 feet or so, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's 42 feet above North Front Street sidewalk to the top of the tallest part of the roof.
So in your application to us, it's immensely helpful if we can have elevation drawings that show
Absolutely.
proposed height, historic heights, existing heights, and
Yep.
neighboring context heights
Sure.
on all elevations.
We'll give you, I just wanted to show you, I mean, these are not accurate, but you're going to get very detailed heights. I'm saying they're not accurate because they're accurate to the old drawing, but you'll be able to see specific heights, materials called out. You know, we'll give you very detailed elevations.
With context drawn in.
With context, sure, we can do that, that's great.
I mean, that's ultimately what we're looking at.
Yeah, the context is hugely important
Context is
for
everything
us.
for us.
Sure.
I have
More
a
so than your
question.
average.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
How
There's a
do
32-foot
you-
drop from
Yes.
Fair Street down. to
30-foot drop, right, basically the parking lot is in the hole at this point. Go ahead.
How do you envision the pedestrian bridge?
I don't know yet. We haven't focused on that. So it needs to be covered in some way to keep snow off of it. It needs to be secured in a way that it doesn't become a safety concern. Open during park hours, probably open to the air. And it'll have to be made out of steel in some way in order to make the span. So those are the design requirements. Beyond that, we're still open-minded.
Because I find that, I did catch this presentation on YouTube, and I find that the elements that are most discordant to me are the glass elements, the atrium. I understand the purpose of the atrium, and I really like the outdoor space, but I feel that the atrium breaks up that view. I'm one of those people who really like to see straight down there,
Sure.
and I wish that the atrium was below that space so that it wouldn't break it down, break it up, and also I feel that the pedestrian bridge, those two things are really out of place in the stockade district.
Okay. The hard part about moving the atrium anywhere else is it doesn't fit with the use of the space. So down below is parking. So
Right,
if
so
you're,
how far does it go? You can't create that walkway down below.
it's right where the cars have to be, the cars that are coming in and out of the garage. And then also if you, so if you lived, let's go back to the floor plan. I'll pull up a real floor plan. So I can zoom in a bit more. Floor plans, here we go. So these are the actual floor plans. So this is the lowest level. We'll look up here. Okay, so this is the level right below the atrium. So the atrium is essentially right here, give or take. And you can see down below, that would be kind of in midair, and also where the cars are coming in, like one lane in and 2 lanes out of the garage. Then when you go up another floor, you'd see here, okay, so yeah, the atrium's right here. The atrium connects the lobbies together. So if you
Right.
live in this building or if you're staying in this hotel, you can get across to this building in your gym clothes without having to go outside.
But you're,
Right.
here's,
So-
let's just to be clear, this passageway is just to prevent people from having to walk outside.
This passageway is to prevent people from having to walk outside. If you live in these buildings, yes.
Right,
So, I mean, I noticed this a couple weeks ago.
And it brings light down. I mean, that's the other point. Those
Well, you can still,
yeah, you can
we,
get-
we discussed this a couple weeks ago, this idea that, you know, the street, any legibility that you can,
Mhm.
you know, salvage for that pedestrian plaza so
Yep.
that people can still interpret the sense of a street that was there
It-
for a long time.
Sure.
Long time.
That
And
is
that you're
very-
basically blockading it with the atrium.
exactly.
Well, the other purpose of the blockade is a purpose to be a blockade, so that this area can be closed at a certain time of night. So one of the safety concerns, again, not part of your purview, but something we've heard from planning board members and from city council members and from the city administration is how do you keep this safe? And so this area back here, these doors would be locked at a certain time of night. I don't know what that hour would be. Much like the atriums in New York City that get you out to the public space beyond the buildings get locked at a certain time. These would close at whatever park hours are determined by the city, and that way we don't have security issues back here. So it did serve a couple purposes. Get people back and forth between the buildings. It was glass, so you could see through it. And actually, we're blocking off this
But it's
space.
just an open area.
It's an open area, but there'll be, vendors will have tables and chairs out there, there'll be things outside that shouldn't be walked away at night, and that the city was concerned about, you know, what will happen back there if it's not closed off in some
Well, I
way.
mean, but the street,
Parts of the
the
city.
street is
You're all part
a
of the city.
concern of us. I mean, that
Sure.
whole street is within the district and it is a concern of ours. So the program that is visible on the exterior is a concern of ours. So
Mhm.
right, this radical rethinking of a public space to be private space, I think is a great concern.
It's private in that it's only closed off during certain hours, but we will never own it. We're just gonna maintain it and run the programming that's determined by the public. I mean, it's not private, we don't have a lease, we can't operate anything we want
I
there.
don't see that as that problematic. I mean, parks close at dusk,
Right.
and it's not that big a deal. I still think that the atrium itself is just completely out of place in that district, and it looks really out of place, and it looks like Tribeca or something, I don't know. It's not the stockade, and I'm truly hostile to it personally.
Well, maybe we can re-envision it in look form, but functionality-wise, it's important in our building for people to get from one building to the other building indoors. And doing it on that level is the important level to do it on. It doesn't make, you can't go up a floor and do it, because now you're into residences, and the general public couldn't use it. You can't go down a level, because then it dismantles the garage, and the entrances into the garage, and the stacking that works. And you can't, you know, if we couldn't make the entrance into the garage directly off Schwank Drive, that wouldn't work. You need stacking to be able to come in where you have a gate. And so this works. Moving, it's a balancing act, I get that. And so there are certain things we're very amenable to, and I'm amenable to looking at, you know, changing the look of it somewhat. But having a connection at that level is important to the project. Or don't have two buildings, have one building on one side, and it's not the project. Then we lose the whole.
I guess I would, my encouragement would be to study options for the
Sure.
program challenges you have there, and know that some members of the commission have
Mhm.
serious issue with the, blocking of a street that has been there since at least 1870.
Mhm.
It was put in to go down to the railroad station for the Ulster Delaware Railroad.
One thing we've contemplated, and I'm
It's pretty
curious.
older.
Could be younger.
Now, can we not have, whoa.
But we're listening.
Yes. We don't need side
Not
conversation, please. All right, continue.
So one other thing we've thought about, and I'm not sure what your feelings are, or if it even makes sense, is to have kind of a cutout here and make an entry to get down to the lower level, kind of like you have a subway entrance, where you have a staircase outdoors that would take you down to the sidewalk that would still exist, down on Fair Street Extension. So essentially, if you're walking, you'd be able to walk, hop downstairs, outside, just covered so the stairs aren't slippery, and then walk down Fair Street Extension like you always did. It would take away, a section, whether it's here or here, I'm not sure, but it would take away a section of the Pedestrian Plaza, enough for a staircase to pop out of the ground. It was a thought that our architect had. It's not necessarily something we have to do, or maybe desirable, maybe not. There's other ways to get there. You could go in the building, down the stairs and come out. You can go in the building, down the elevator and come out, or you could walk across the, the pedestrian bridge the whole way. But it was a thought at some point where the grade worked out to. The head height has to work also. You can't go down to hit your head. You'd have to make it. You'd have to fit in a spot where the grade was low enough that the staircase could take you down, continue you out. So I don't know if you guys have any feelings or thoughts about that.
Sounds practical. Possibility.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of envision it next to the, how you would tie it in visually with the rest of your connection
It would have
across
to be
the
changed.
street.
Right. It was just, if that's something that becomes important, then the whole look changes, much like we're willing to change things, but.
Okay. Well, I think the idea of visual continuity is one that we're valuing. Glass preserves some of it, but
Right.
it's two layers of glass. There's a lot of reflectivity.
Yeah.
It might preserve the connection down the hill and let new visitors to our area recognize this as a path to somewhere, which is hard to tell. I think some of this is the intrusion of just having a tree in front, and I'm
Yeah,
having a
the
hard
tree-
time just
the tree that
envisioning how that
It can.
is all gonna look.
The tree and the fountain were placeholders for now. Making it all open is totally acceptable to us. It was.
I haven't seen the Atrium.
I think visually that, and at least mentally for me, would make a huge difference if you could,
Open it up.
just visually let us see what that's gonna look
Sure.
like. It would allow me to have more of a nuanced response to the idea of the atrium. And whether a punch out on one side of it or where that would show up would give us a way of tying the streetscape that we're losing with this to letting folks know that, yep, you've hit the edge of the Stockade district, but Kingston itself continues down to the plaza and Schwank Drive. And
We've also talked about the idea of kind of a visual demarcation line somewhere in the pedestrian plaza where actually on the ground there would be pavers of a different color and a bronze plaque or something that says this is the end of the Stockade district and explains what it is and maybe shows a historic photo of it and says, okay, now if you go down these stairs, you're in, what's the lower area called? Is there a name for it?
But
And still the Stockade.
to the extent that you historically, like you have historical commission to back that up, so that.
Yeah, oh no, it would have to be accurate. We wouldn't just put it out there for no reason.
We've had applicants who would want to put random years on their buildings that they, and I'm just like, it wasn't built in that year. Oh, okay.
No, it would have to be historically accurate or
Accuracy is important.
there would be no point in doing it.
That's
But at
true.
some point, there is a line, right, where stockade ended and,
Yeah, that
so
is
it's a
very
thought. We don't have to do it. It was just an idea.
Yeah, and I think it would visual, opening that up, at least in your presentation to us,
Sure.
gives us a much better, or we can give you more nuanced response than we can look into the tree power.
That is not a problem. It's easy enough to do. Remove the tree, take out the fountain for now. Let's look at it and decide what it should look like.
Yeah, I think that would be a big help in, at least for me, trying to render a decision whether it's a huge impact or a lesser one that is, or gives or there's some way to structure it so it clearly enhances the stockade rather than just being a demarcation line.
Sure.
In terms of the atrium, I think the two problems I have with it is one that you can't see past it or through it as well, and the other is that it looks the way that it does. So if you change the look of it to somehow, like you wanted to reference the history, if you reference the history with the atrium in some way, if you made it look in some special way that was interesting visually, then it would probably
Be less offensive.
enhance the experience.
Okay. Do you have any
I'm not,
ideas on, I mean, I'll tell the architect, which is what they get paid for, their idea, enhance look to reference the history so that it enhances
I mean,
the
we can't
experience.
specifically
yeah, there must be
design it,
some
you know,
way.
No, I understand, but if you had something in mind that comes to mind, great. If you don't, they'll come up with a number of options and we'll look at them and tweak them, and if you don't like them, we'll work on them again.
Right.
something that just looks more historically,
Sure. I gotcha.
It's certainly,
in
for
fairness, we
me,
didn't
what's
spend-
important is the scale.
Yeah.
I see it sort of popping up 2 stories out of nowhere. I don't think that height is necessary. If it were to tie more to the scale of something like the Pike plan or the front porch we're looking at
Yep.
here.
Are you talking about the atrium still?
Yeah, I
agree
think that
too.
would
I think
be
it's also
helpful.
too high.
yeah, it's hard for me to envision, but that's my initial response. Just the scale of it popping up 2 stories seems way out of character with what's in the neighborhood.
Not a problem. We have not spent any time working on
county
the
building.
atrium other than the first round. We spent time in the last several weeks working on the corner building, because that's really where we focused our discussions.
Yeah, and I have to say that I'm happier with what I'm seeing here. Making it a counterpoint but not a mirror image, I think is the right way to go. I like the idea of continuing the streetscape wall line. I tend to prefer the covered sidewalk, but I'm aware there are plenty of
I'm
folks who-
strongly against the covered sidewalk Pike
This is
planning.
overhearing.
There are those who love and hate it,
Right?
it's true.
No,
right?
I'm not
I-
talking
I
about, I'm not
agree with
talking about it for the rest of the historic district, I'm talking about at this particular site.
There it is.
The somehow mirroring the front porch.
Continuing the Pike plan across this building, I just, it hasn't, I don't think it was ever there, the Pike plan. The Montgomery Ward was demolished, was Montgomery Ward demolished before the Pike plan was there?
Yes,
Yes, I
Yeah.
think that's
So-
pretty clear.
10, 12 years before.
It was never there, and, I mean, I'll be interested to hear what my fellow commissioners say, but, I mean, also the breaking of it, I guess one could make the argument that by breaking it at the garage entrance, it gives a little bit more notice to the pedestrian that they're coming to an important entryway, but I just,
One thing that you should be aware of.
we don't know the future of the Pike plan at this point. So to continue it and incorporate it into a new architecture might be,
I'm not wedded to it, honestly. I was giving you my own preference. But I like the idea of popping that mass out as a counter